All right, we are live.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to M&M Exhibition Poultry Talking Chickens. We're sponsored by Rogier's Poultry Supply. Remember, go to Rogier's if you need anything for poultry. It's at www.rogierpoultrysupplies.com. We have a special guest today, Tim Jurgens. How are you, Tim?
Hey, doing very well. Very excited to be here with you both.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here, too. We're going to cover a lot of different subjects today, kind of let Tim roll on with what he wants to talk to you about. Matt and I got a few things before we get started, and we might end with them too. Number one was, if you watch this on YouTube or listen on Spotify, please like and subscribe. It does a world of good to get us out there. When you get it on your if you're on the M&M page on Facebook or on regular Facebook, if you could share it and like it, that would be great too. Matt, you want to give them the news on what's going on in the ABA?
Yes, it's our finally after a few months of being in standard revision, it's going to the printer. So Mike and I had some meetings and got some things finalized with Karen and Kim last week. But I think it's off, and I actually expect it to probably back by the 1st of August. I think. But the good thing is you can go to bantamclub.com and we've got a pre-order. So we're running a special right now where you can order the big standard, the mini standard, and it comes in a ABA tote for $95. You can get in there and get those pre-ordered. So when they do come out, Karen will get those shipped out just as soon as they hit the press. But this is we're waiting on some material we'll put on the M&M site. But Kim Munden's designing us a little flyer or something to get going that shows some of the things that we did. So this is the biggest edition we've ever published, and I think it's the best one we've ever published. The pictures that Kim has done are fantastic. So we have original artwork that her and Rusty Hart and some others designed that were in older standards that we brought back, and then we have some new photographs that's been reworked to where all the backgrounds are the same, and then our committee, which was Mike, John Beamer, Paul Monteith, and Gary Rossman, juried those pictures as all of them as judges to kind of get better pictures in the standard, and I'm happy with all those. And then one thing we did that I don't think was in the last one is the Hall of Champions. So we have the champion and the reserve champion, or the champion and the semi-animal champion, pictures of those birds back to 2020, 2003. So that's a neat thing just to see the progression of birds over 20 years. So great addition. We added back in all the inactive breeds. All the updates to date are going to be in there. So there's nothing supplement or extra going to be in this edition that we need to do. So until we have more qualifying meets, this is it. So go to bantamclub.com, get your copy, and I think you'll be impressed. And I know that Paul and I and Mike and Karen and Kim and Gary and John have looked at this thing till we're blind, and we've caught several mistakes that have been in there over the years: spelling, typographicals, wording, things that just weren't real clear. And Paul was a slave driver getting that corrected, and he actually went to the index and checked everything in the index to make sure it was going to the right page, which is something I never did. So I did a good job on it. We're real excited to get it out, and the more pre-buys we go, the better we'll be, because this is a big expense, for the club to get it published. So thousands of dollars. So we're happily anticipating the result and like to hear your comments when you get it out.
Tens of thousands of dollars.
Yes, it's expensive. Printing has went through the roof. I will say that yearbooks and standards, costs have had to go up just because of paper and printing costs. So,
and
absolutely,
also, if you would like to get an ad in the yearbook, Karen's still taking those. Be a great thing to go to the website for the ABA, and you could do it right there. You could send her a letter, you could email her, whatever you want, but get something in there, and that would be fantastic. It's a time capsule of every year, and that's why we keep them. Look back over them. It's good when you stay in this. I was looking today, and I hadn't realized that as of April, I think the 17th or 27th of this year, I have been an ABA member for 50 years. I didn't know I was that damn old, but evidently you showed a couple years without, when you're 13 and 14, that's
Now,
I
$5 was a lot of money back then, wasn't it?
yes, it was. Yes, it was. So, but yeah, it's a great thing. It's a great thing to be involved in. You get your quarterlies. The quarterly will be coming out before too long. If you happen to be a director or a committee chairman listening to this podcast, you'll be getting an email or a message from Matt or I. It's time to get your articles in. Let people know how you're going. I know everybody's busy, but 5 minutes is all it takes.
One more shameless plug. Can you see
Yes.
that?
No.
Little blurry. There you are.
Kind of, sort of. Nope.
Yeah, boy, it must not be. Well, anyways, that's Ralph Sturgeon's book, Start Where You Are with What You Have. There it
Now
is.
you can see it. Yep.
You can get that on bantamclub.com. So I had a lot of comments about where to get that after the last couple podcasts. So that's there, and it's fairly inexpensive, and you can get that along with your standard. All right, we'll get to Tim.
Let's go.
I guess I'll start because I first met Tim. Gosh, it was early 2000s. I was Emmett Rachel's retired as a secretary of the Rhode Island Red Club, and old Bob Blosel talked me into taking that job over. And for 4 or 5 years, I was the secretary back then. And Tim was our director out on the West Coast at the time, and he had big Reds, and we were booming. We did 6 newsletters a year. Bob was a slave driver for getting information out to everybody and getting people to write articles, and we went along really good. And then it finally got to where a few members weren't as happy with me as some of the others, and they kind of ran me out, and it was all just a downhill slide from there. So that's how we first met. And then he got Chanteclers a few years ago, and I did too. So we kind of kept in touch that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, going back that time, I had for myself having Reds for a long time. Yeah, the Red Club, I feel like made some real movement there, didn't we?
Yeah, we were the second largest breed club in the country, next to the Old English Club at the time. I think when I finally passed it on to the next secretary, we had 350 members, which is probably unheard of nowadays. For most breed clubs, that's a pretty good membership.
Oh, absolutely, and it was informative.
We even had people that were members that didn't have Reds. They just liked the newsletters and the website and some of the stuff we did.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember some of my favorite was, Bob, what a great promoter. But when breeders would do the videos, you did one. That's where I remember your daughter. I don't know. She was quite young, but you went through your where you were at before, I remember, and Danny Feathers. I know Dennis Myers had made one, and just several breeders. And that was I thought that was extremely valuable, and just really
I still have some of those DVDs. I'll have to see if I can do something with those one of these days. At first, I have to find them, but I know Bob was good about VHS tapes, and he had the latest and greatest VHS camera, and then we went to DVDs. So some of those old ones were still on VHS tapes, and I think we had them all converted to DVDs, and I've got them somewhere.
Oh, so excellent. I have them in VHS.
Yeah, we'll have to get them digitized and put up here somehow, because I think some of that would be still valuable information.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the Red Club is a great picture for what I think about of the poultry, and referring back to what the ABA is doing. I really have appreciated watching you both and other leaders, because poultry raising, as you guys have mentioned throughout, it's different now. You just don't necessarily have people with your experience. I mean, Mike's 50 years with the ABA. I mean, in my area, on maybe three fingers, you can count the people. And we're talking this Eastern Washington part of the country that have any idea about raising poultry. And so there's a big vacuum in certain parts, I think.
There is.
Yeah, we see that. We see that in certain, because we get I've judged just about every state in a couple different countries, and And I see the states that are really strong, and then I see the ones that struggle a little bit with just numbers. And we can drive a couple hours and hit a half a dozen shows a year, where some people have to drive 12 hours to get to one. So the logistics of the shows, we're blessed in our area. And I know out where you're at, I've been out to California several times. I haven't made it up to, every time I go to Washington or Oregon, I get booked out there at either AI knocks us out, or
Oh,
COVID, or something. It's just been every trip I've ever had out there has gotten canceled, so I never got there yet. But
wow.
there's two states I haven't been to, is Washington and Oregon. So
Boy, it would be great if you could. But how I was saying about the Red Club, it had, like we say, especially large reds, as you and I've talked, to see a good one, you only, especially I don't fault judges or anybody, you only know what you know. And if you haven't worked through the process of seeing what a good red is, and when I talk good red, I'm talking the barn first, right? Type, a good length of bodies and color and those things as well, that it's really hard to understand why maybe your bird isn't as of quality, right? And it takes the numbers. You guys have been talking about that. And that's something that I, from my experience with reds, that, they take a good number to hatch and be willing to cull, to really make those gains.
And I think one of the problems with the big ones, and we talked earlier, and Mike and I have said this quite often, as we judge anymore, you just don't see them like we used to. But a red's got about a 2 or 3 month window of condition that it can be shown in, and the bantams are just all over the place. They're plentiful, doing a good job on them. We got a lot of good breeders, and a lot of those breeders are big red breeders that switch to bantams because they take up less space. They don't take as forever to get in condition. They're just, I think that's what we're segueing into here, but they're easier to deal with. And I appreciate large fowl. Mike does as well. Lord knows we've had every kind, breed, variety off and on over the years, but at this point in my time, I can't do them. I ain't got enough room. I could do so many more bantams, and economically there's no more money in them. It's just a shame that they're going that way, but we've seen this since the 70s, of the shift to the bantams being the majority, and the large fowl kind of just hung in there. But the reds have really plummeted. There just aren't many good large fowl reds, and we grab one every once in a while, and I'll say, "Hey, I found one." But when Dennis was showing, and Frank Harris, and some of the big guys, we'd see good classes in both rose comb and single comb, and we just don't see that anymore. They've dwindled away, and they talk all this heritage this and heritage that, and some of those I would even be pressed to call them a red. So
yeah, exactly. And I think that ties in, about utility. That's what I love about those standard pages, those first 30 or so, that talk about the important parts of the bird. They're all based on from those founding members, because their livelihood depended on it, right? Yeah, they brought some exotics like Sumatras and those things that have been in there a long time, but by and large, the American breeds and Mediterranean, as well as Asiatics as well, they survived on those. And so those key points, and I think, what I've observed in terms of that, if breeders can, get back to those a little bit more, can help maybe offset some of the costs, right? Because I think you wrote an article, Matt, or posted something years back. Okay, so I won't be able to quote me, but we were talking about, if you need egg layers, it's a whole lot easier to just go down to your local box store, buy some production egg layers that lay at about 80%. They mature in 5 months, and they're shelling out eggs, right?
Yeah, they spent millions of dollars creating that, and that was kind of mine and Neil Grassball's old byline about meat birds, and and egg layers, you're not going to get rich or even break even, using what we have as that for that
Yeah.
purpose. And Neil always hated that dual purpose because he says there's no such thing. Either are meat birds or they're egg layers, and the ones that cross over don't do real well at either. So, and I think we got past that in the 50s and 60s, and people still have that sentimental value that, and it's nice having, I know my Chantecler Bantams, I was telling Mike last week, I had a pair of large fowl Chanteclers. My Bantams actually laid bigger eggs than the large fowl
Yeah.
Chanteclers. I mean, if you looked at them in the incubator when I was trying to hatch them, I thought, my God, that Bantam egg is huge. So the Chanteclers, there's a carcass there that you could possibly use if you wanted to
Yeah.
process them. And I think Ed Mongold, and you were
Yes.
talking with him when he was pushing the Hamps as being like a little dual purpose Bantam if you wanted something for the backyard. So there's breeds out there. Both Plymouth Rocks would definitely do it.
Yeah.
There's some that are pretty much worthless. Now my water malls, there's not much there of anything, and the egg looks like a pigeon egg. So
Definitely.
they're not real
Yeah.
utility. But the Chanteclers are wonderful. They lay a lot of eggs. They lay. I've got white leghorn, rose comb white leghorn Bantams, and they lay just as many eggs as those things do, and a nice size egg. So I think you could. My wife always bitched, and that's why we got those hybrid egg layers because we've got all these chickens and never no eggs when I'm hatching because I was saving them all. So now we're done hatching. I got Bantam eggs out the wazoo, and we still have a few. What were those things called, Mike? Amber links. We tried a new one the last time. Yeah,
they're white, whatever the hell they are.
They look like a white Holland to me.
Yeah.
Other than that, they don't lay a white egg; they lay a brown egg. But they're 3 years old now and still going fairly strong. So
they really they kicked off at 4 months and started laying at 4 months old.
And a huge egg. I mean,
yeah. And I'm not advocating, but I just know in today's realm, I've heard many people, they go, oh, it's heritage. And then all of a sudden they're feeding those particularly large reds, feed them for 8-9 months before they got any eggs.
Yep.
And these people who have no experience with poultry suddenly are, putting in a lot of money and no reward.
Yeah,
and
they're getting frustrated.
And that's why, at times I think if they produced a little bit more, possibly, maybe there would be some of that. But, I know they aren't going to lay like the hatchery layers, or the Cornish cross, of course, is phenomenal growth, right? But that brings me into, what you guys have been talking about, starting at third base. Mm-hmm. I think that is so true. And I think that's a great analogy there, or comparison, because, if you've had to work your tail off producing things and learn all those secrets, or not secrets, but learn all the steps by making mistakes, man, you appreciate the value of something. Whereas if I'm already buying, grand champion birds and I've had to do very little for it, I don't always, I don't understand all the steps it took to get there. And I think that's something that I appreciated that episode with you and your daughter. You guys were talking about showmanship and really focusing. That helps me as a judge out here at the youth shows to really help try to instill or challenge those exhibitors to think about the key components of their birds. And I think that's a real value. You guys have brought something different to the internet, truly.
Yeah, we've seen it evolve from God knows the old, and I got the ABA and the APA, both of them. I was kind of helped them get online and do websites. And in an ABA meeting back in the late 90s, them old guys told me the internet's never going to catch on and that thing's going to be a fad. So it tells you where we went from then. But we started out in a little thing called Chicken Chat, which was like a little chat room. And at one time there was maybe 300 or 400 people in that thing. It got almost unmanageable. And then we kind of went to the message boards through the, and then him and I got to this idea for this podcast because we've seen some of our friends over in England, a couple other ones do it. And I thought, well, let's do one and see if we can keep it clean enough to where it's G rated and get some different people on there talking about different things. And that's a good intro into you and in your perspective, because you're not going to 25, 30 shows a year like we're doing. And you're still active in the hobby and still raising nice birds.
I appreciate that. That's what, I will say, because of that, I haven't been able to show for, a little history. My dad and I've been around poultry most of my life, but not actual standard bred poultry till probably this is my 32nd year of that. Not saying it's been all great, but that's what my exposure. And I haven't been able to show my dad, he housed all the poultry at his home. And then 12 years ago, he passed away. And so I couldn't do that, but I held on to a few birds here and there. And I just haven't been able to get, I'm a teacher by trade. That's my vocation. And it's been great, but I don't have a lot. I've been blessed. My wife and I we have 6 children. So, that there's a lot of things going on. And in the terms of that, I've just not been able to drive the 5-6 hours to show. All right. But that doesn't mean I have not tried to really focus on traits. And you talk about, I don't know if anybody would care to hear this, but my journey to get Chanteclers is kind of an interesting one. I had, over the years, Paul Weiser, who, he's wants to be in the background actually quite a bit, but he has done more for bringing Chantecler Bantams at least into actual legitimacy to be picked, as you guys mentioned before. Chanteclers were, even though they're been accepted for a long time, they're actually pretty relatively new. I mean, in terms of show quality or actually being eligible for higher than breed awards. And anyway, back in like 2007, around there, I saw him for the first time. And in 2011, I was talking to Paul. I said, Paul, hey, I know you, because he never wanted to really let them out till he felt they were at a certain level. And so I said, hey, if you ever think about it, please do. And according to him, he's let it out to very few people, but we're at a show later and I was observing, I asked him some questions. I saw two I guess strain traits or family traits in his flock. And I guess that impacted him, because I got a call in 2019 saying, hey, I'm ready to let these things go out to the public, and do you want to have some eggs? And that started me on my journey. So essentially I waited almost about 10 years, to get them. And it was well worth the wait, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Now that's how I got them is I've seen them. I seen them out west when I was out there at, a few shows years ago at Lucasville. I judged, and Adrienne Blankenship had partridge back in the day, and she sold those birds to Tom Kane, and Tom showed one at Lucasville and went reserve AOCCL, and actually some of the judges down there didn't even know what it was. So because I'd seen Adrienne's birds several times over the years, she had really good ones, and she's a good one to talk to. She's a purist for Chantecler type, but I had seen them, so I knew what they was, and I was always interested in the white ones. And I'd seen pictures of Paul's and, seen what he'd done. And then Anthony Ashley had got some. And then Anthony and Whitebirds is like tar on feathers. He just he didn't enjoy keeping Whitebirds clean. So I got some from him, the first batch. And we raised a few. And that's when we found out the Merrick's issues. And then Anthony decided to get clear out of them. And then he brought me the rest of them. So that's kind of how we got started. Kind of a long story short. I'm thinking maybe about 10 years now, Mike.
I think so.
It probably was about 14 or 15, I think.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it is we showed a bunch of them at the Ohio State Fair, and the bird I liked didn't win. The cockerel, which was a son to the cockbird that I really liked, went best of show. So we've had one best of show and 2 reservist shows on Chantecler Bantams. And a lot of people just look and shake their heads because they don't know what they are, or they've never seen them before, and things like that. So, and I think I told you the Brian Decker story when him and Ben Porter, they were down in Kentucky, and this is how Paul got the birds. I guess they were down in Kentucky and went through the sale barn, and they had a pen there. The guy had them on their white Challengers, and Ben and Paul laughed, and they bought them. And then Paul took them, or Brian took them back out to the West Coast to Paul, and that's kind of the start of those. And I think they did a few crosses and things to them since then. But it's kind of funny. I realized how they got going after I'd already had them, and because Ben told me. So kind of a neat story how they've got going. And then I got hooked up with Tom Carey, who's been working on the buffs, and I played with them a little bit. And then I seen some partridge, and I finally decided to, because me and partridge that we talked before, love hate, and I said I can make them damn things. So I did. I'm in this is the F6, I think, that's out there now. So I got them on the ground, and I am real happy with what I'm seeing from what we got out of last year's crop. So there's probably 50 of them out there. So I'm hoping to get enough to where I haven't ever showed a partridge yet. So hopefully get them out maybe this fall. Yeah. And I got a few nice whites running around there too. So
that's outstanding. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I think, friend from Canada who has them, he just says they're, just a plain old white chicken. And I'll be honest, they really have, I think because of that, the plainness, right? They don't have necessarily all these flashy things, but because of that, there's great detail and depth to simplicity. And that's what matches where I'm at with them.
The females especially, because I always tell them, everybody, the females are pretty nondescript. But I put a couple pullets down that has caught their eye, because once they're in condition, they got a bright red comb, and they're in feather, and they got the right type. They do catch the judge's eyes, and they've beat a hell of a lot of nice Polish and Cornish. We call them, Mike and I call them the Cornish killers.
Right on. Oh, that's something. Well, I have not.
When we first got them, we just shake our heads and go, hey, we got reserve AOCCL. Hey, we got best. Can you believe that? All them Polish and all them Cornish, and them guys are over there cussing.
Oh, I bet they were.
So a neat breed. I really enjoy it, and that's basically mostly what I have here now. So just easy to keep. There's not a better bird for this climate. If mine were out where they were cold, they just are a hardy heat, cold tolerant bird, and lay well. So I can't say enough about them there. And without the little Merrick's issue, I think once I get past that, because they were bad for that when I first got them, but I'm getting better every year. So
that's really great. I applaud them. I'm a big advocate for them. That I think that for me, the males have came a lot easier. I get a lot of females talk about some type falls. I get a lot that share some cushion, and are a little softer feather than maybe they should be, but they do produce some pretty decent males. But one thing that I have found with them specifically, that's one thing I kind of wanted to talk about before getting into their utility is, some questions for people, listeners, as well as what is their program? And I think I heard Paul Ashbrook say that many years ago when he was alive. We were at a show actually with Paul Weiser, him and Tony Albritton and another judge. We were sitting down, and he was talking about breeds that he'd had and how they match or did not match his program. And he raised Cornish. We'd mentioned some Cornish. He'd done well with them, but they just didn't match with what his program was. And I think that's something, you can think about. What is your program? What's your infrastructure, buildings you have, weather that's going on, as well as your own interests. If you're somebody that maybe you like watching birds, but you just don't want to care a lot. Maybe white isn't your best color variety.
Mhm.
But I think trying to match, and I was thinking about how many breeds I've had some experience with, and it came down to I've had a little bit of experience with quite a few, not as many as you guys, but and I think it's taken some success and quite a bit of failure with some to kind of land on a breed is the Chanteclers that really matches my program, I guess. And so I think that's something I'd encourage people that are joining, because, right, we're all drawn to flashy things, whatever it is, flashy cars, homes, chickens. Everybody, I see Craig Hansen posting about his cochins, right? His silver laced and gold laced. And man, they are gorgeous when they're in proper coloration, but man, they take a lot, right? But trying to find out what matches your program and what your intensity or intentionality is. That's what I asked both of you. What made you choose, Matt? You've already shared, some Chanteclers, but Mike, what drew you to some of your breeds?
Just the look on them. I like curves, and depth and balance, and coaching's always appealed to me that way. Wyandottes appealed to me that way. Oh, there's other breeds. I like the width of birds. It seems to be pleasing to me. I smile for some reason when I see it, no matter what it's on. And I guess a little more flair for me. I mean, we've had it and done wonderful with reds and white rocks and barred rocks and Leghorns and Old English and everything, but when it comes right down to it, to me, still one of the prettiest birds is a really good Wyandotte, which there aren't many really good Wyandottes out there, large or bantam, unfortunately. And a Cochin, I really like them. I mean, I like Brahmas. I think it's that massive look. They have a massive look, even though a good one in a bantam isn't. They look massive, but they don't weigh a lot, and I like that. And I like Cornish. It's one of my favorite breeds ever. I never could raise any. I mean, I'm just terrible at it. I've tried. I've had champion of show on Cornish. One of my first ones back in the 70s. I had champion of show, 2,800 bird show. I won it on a Cornish pullet. She was wonderful. I didn't breed her. She was. I went out. We were 17 years old, and I went out to Gorney, Iowa, to Art Prowse, and spent 3 days to come home a Cornish man. But I knew what they looked like. They appealed to me, that heart-shaped body. Now, hard feathering, I have to really watch myself because I'm so used to softer feathered birds, and I can really get a soft feathered bird in shape. So they're the other end of the spectrum to me, care-wise, conditioning-wise, how they're fed, how much exercise they can get. I mean, you can leave a coach in, they don't have to do shit because they won't do shit. They're fine. But you can't do that to an Old English. You can't leave them in a little pen all the time. You can raise them, but you're not going to beat the big boys like that. It's impossible. They need to be out. They need to fly. They need dirt. And I think a lot of breeds, even some with feathered on their feet at a time, on different times, they need good old dirt and grass. That being up on wood or being in wire cages or anything, it doesn't work with them. It will for a little bit, but it's almost impossible. The greatest way to condition those birds, any clean-legged bird, a rock, a red, a Wyandotte, the greatest conditioner is Mother Nature. Let it rain on them. Let them walk through that water. Let them do it. Let them be chickens, and they've developed that body structure you need. A lot of it's genetic, but genetics can go to shit too if you don't take care of them as they should be. So that's what drew me. My problem is I like them all. I've tried to breed a lot of them. Another one that Matt and I have tried, I can't tell you the thousands of dollars I spent on call ducks and sea brights.
Yep.
I love them. I cannot, for the life of me, raise them. I mean, I've had Craig Fields and Tom Carey tell me exactly how to do it. Yeah, I can't do it. To this point, I haven't been able to do it. Let's just put it that way. Now, I can raise Old English, and I still can't raise Cornish for the crap. But anything else, I've always had pretty good luck with. But I don't know what that is, and I guess I don't care because I just give up. I figure if you ever see a show on those and we're winning on them, we're buying them somewhere, most likely, because I just can't do it. Now, and same with waterfowl. I mean, I like massive. I like the extremes. I like the great big geese. I like the great big ducks. I mean, I love Toulouse and Rouen and Aylesbury's. Pekins, I like pekins. They're a big white duck. But I mean, I like pekins. They don't, I like the form of an Aylesbury, that deep keel, and I like runner ducks. And I like khaki cat. I like both ends of the spectrum. We did that with magpie ducks. I didn't know what the hell a magpie duck. I mean, I knew what they were, but never had them. And I thought, boy, I wonder how hard those are raised. Well, I'm not going to go into how we got them, but I had some, and I set like 62 eggs. They're the layingest son of bitches you ever saw in your life. I hit 62 eggs. I hit 60 ducks.
60.
They were for chickens in the incubator. I turned them the same as the chickens, and they hatched everywhere. I have tried to hatch coals, I bet, for 20 years. I've hatched 2 in my life. It's just the weird, and I had good luck. But I made things up like I saw them. I don't follow directions real well. If it sounds intuitive to me, color patterns are the same way. I just find the allies and keep working. But it's hard when you come down to it. If you've got a white chicken or a white duck or a white goose that's in top feather is pure white with the red comb, and I don't care what color you put up there, that chicken is striking to me. And it's just as hard to raise them. It's harder to condition them and get them white than any party-colored breed. And they don't have the color faults.
Yeah.
You can have great type, but you can color fault in every section of a lot of birds. People don't understand that. They don't understand why is it always, it's not always, but why are the whites and the blacks? You look at your champion row. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah. When you get down to the point cuts, if they're equal, but you can usually find the point cuts on the party colored birds.
Right.
Very few things are colored like a really good sea bright as far as a silver lace. Bang.
Yeah.
Very few. And when you find them, they're special, they're rare, and they'll run. I mean, you'll win with them. But reproducing that is extremely, extremely difficult. Buck is a bitch.
Yeah. I've heard that. I've never raised those.
I was going to comment on buffs because Mike was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, I guess, and he brought some eggs down for me to set, and there was a few buffs in there, and I've raised so many buffs over the years that I can tell a good buff when it gets them wing feathers in. Just when it starts getting this color, and I can tell it's not a white, well, he's got about a half a dozen down here that are as good a buff color at that stage as I've ever seen on any Orpington.
They get the cool color, don't they?
They are even and nice and just coming along just fine. So I moved them from my little brooders over to the stack brooder today, so they had a little more room, and I got the get them out and handle them. But I thought these are kind of unique because it's our line of buffs, which is a conglomeration of God knows what everybody didn't want, and a couple guys dying over the years, and us shamed into taking them and too ashamed to get rid of them. But Tom Roebuck gave him some birds last year that were what, a quarter large fowl or half large fowl?
No, they were they were half to half. So they were the third generation from large fowl, I think.
Which is what they needed. These buffs have not had anything in them for years, and there was such a limited amount of them, and they had this stupid 3-point comb, and they had a fishtail to comb. The comb we could never get rid of. He finally beat that, and we've done well with them. And we had reserve a breed with one last year. We had Featherleg with one at Lucasville before those shows went under. So we won good with them, but they come in bundles of one. You can raise 100 chicks and get one or two. But I'm really, I was going to tell him, and I haven't had a chance yet, but I'm really impressed with these 6 or 7 that I got here as chicks. So I can usually tell a white and a black coaching within a couple of weeks whether it's going to amount to anything or not. And buffs were never that easy. Well, these look like a white or black as chicks now. So, and
they're when you watch them, when you watch a coaching chick, I've never had the balls to cull them out of the after about a week, but I think I really can. You can look at them, and you'll have a lot of them stand, even as chicks, they stand kind of like this, right? Yeah, maybe they'll drop in, maybe they'll do this, yeah, maybe. The good ones stand right. You can see they're level across the bottom, and they stand level on top, or they even have a tad bit of tilt. Well, that's all where the legs are put on them. You got to have enough breast in front to bring them down. And I've really noticed that since we got the whites pretty doggone good, and watching the whites grow up, as far as and I got we have really good big blacks. But I notice the similarities now, how you can tell which ones are just going to be, yep, that's a nice coaching. I mean, it's a representative of the breed. It's not the one you're going to win with in hot competition, but it's average. So that and I haven't had the balls to cull them out of the incubator, but I'm pretty sure you can. And Matt's right on the buffs. Generally, you never have any that stand level. I mean, they're always up looking retarded.
They used to have to be 8 months old. There's been a couple times I almost killed a couple winners, and I'll walk out in the barn and where in the hell did that bird come from? Because it didn't look that way yesterday. Yeah. So they're a different I don't even think they have the same makeup as a lot of the blacks or whites as far as how they got here. I think it's a whole different bird as far as body type and build, and it just never
personalities all about crazy, most of them.
Some of them are wild and nutty where you never have that with the blacks and whites. And although we've put blacks and whites into them and
several things
to try to fix them, so I'm really curious to see how these with the large fowl infusion do, because I think they needed something, and I just never had the stones to do that, or there was no big buffs anymore. So Tom was blessed that he already had them, and he got tired of the same thing. He's been working on buff bantams for a long time, and he'll get a few good ones. And he shows, I've judged many of his good buffs, but they come in like bundles of one. You don't get, I can raise 100 white Chanteclers, and I'm not going to have, that many bad ones. Buff coachings, that's a different story. So if I get 1 or 2 good ones out of 100, I'd be tickled. And you might not get any. I mean, there's been years when I've heard him say they're all going to the swap. They're crap. And, then the next year we get a few more. So that's a tough, buff's a tough color in anything. I tried the Chanteclers and I give up. Tom Carey's still working on those. I did the same thing with those. I crossed them to whites and got some nice birds, but just keeping them alive, they were bad for Merrick's as well. So the birds that I needed to use the next year all died on me. So I decided that the whites and the partridge were enough projects.
Well, I think what you're saying, I hear you, and last week you told your past experience, the year you bred from a grouping and
Yep.
none of them were any good. I think that's another, that stick to itness, that the hobby, poultry breeding, really you have to have it, because it is, it is a long-term process, and I think that's something that I've seen too, that, things are not easy. And I appreciated, Mike, you saying that about white birds, and I'm not saying mine are any really that good, but a true white bird is phenomenal. Seeing them in shape and in great condition, and it is just grabs your attention for sure.
It makes you smile.
Yeah.
And I kind of come to a realization about 4 or 5 years ago, because I mean, I liked a lot of things and I bred a lot of things. And it was one of them things when I got a good one and they did well, then it made me happy. That's not the way to approach this game. The ones that make me happy and make me smile just sitting watching them, those breeds are the breeds I've decided to keep. And coaching's up now. They can try you, especially when they're young and you fall down over top of them. They refuse to move. They're dumber than stumps, But that's part of it. At least you're not running, flying, screaming away from you.
Oh
because
man,
you have their personality. I don't have that temperament. I can't take that shit. So if it makes me smile, then whether we get to show or don't get to show, I'm still okay with going out and spending the money and spending the time and doing the stuff, because they make me smile. I can sit down and I can relax around them. And if it's something that, you do good with, but you're always keyed up, that's not you, man.
Yeah.
And it's not you. It's the same as a job. If you have a job, and there aren't many, but there are, if you really think of it, that everything has its difficulties. But if you can go and not dread every day, well, then that's not good for you. I don't care how much you make or how well you do. That's not good for you. And that's the same way with dogs or anything else. Sometimes you get one and you like the dog, but damn, the thing drives you nuts. And there's other dogs that aren't anything special, but they make you smile.
Yeah.
People are that way. There's people you can tolerate. There's people that can become acquaintances, but there's very few friends, because you just can't, you can't relax and just have fun with it. And you don't have to do shit. You don't have to be doing anything to have a really good time. That's when you know that you're where you're supposed to be. And I'm the same way with chickens. If they got me, I'm telling you, I'll get rid of them in a heartbeat. I've loaded shit up and took it on a Wednesday morning before I thought about it, dropped it off at the auction, and come home and don't care what they bring, because they're not here no more. And I feel so much better. Don't even give a shit if I've lost $1,000. I ain't got them.
Yeah.
It's the same way. So but you got to go through that process. It's a process. I really like these. I really like these, so let me try. And that's the other thing, is don't try, just do it. If it doesn't work, you're not out anything but your time. And if you've had fun and enjoyed your time, hey, it's worth anything you put into it.
I think that's really critical. I'm glad you said that. I know time's moving along. I was going to say one thing that kind of my intent was, the utility aspect. I think Bantams really do have a place where I think people maybe haven't promoted that as much. That, at least my Bantam line, and Matt has those and you guys have seen them, but I process quite a few birds. Last year, about 100, and they aren't a huge amount of meat. They're not like something you get out of the box store or Safeway or Rosars or something, but out here. But, a couple birds can provide a good meal for, a couple people.
Yeah.
And I do think one thing, whether a person processes their birds or not for meat, they could be dog food, you name it. But I've found that it has been so helpful to feel the bird with my hands, then process the bird and feel it without the feathers. And that is probably, if anything, I'd encourage every person that does this hobby to do 1 or 2 birds a year just for that. So they can, and actually Matt and I were talking, or I'd message him. One thing you guys have been mentioning, and something I did first time in my 32 years with poultry, I actually made copies of the scorecard and went down through it and kind of scored birds. And then when I processed them, I kind of compared it. And the biggest thing, and I'm a slow learner, that's why I only have one breed, because I'm still trying to figure that out. But it really has been helpful to feel, I guess, put words into my feelings, if that makes any type of sense.
And I think, like we talked, it's good to do that scorecard, because I did that with the white coachings when we first started. And that was the reason I got rid of the white frizzles, because I soon seen that those white frizzles were messing up the white coachings.
Oh,
And to go, because none of them are ever going to be perfect. And I think even with the Chanteclers, I don't think I ever had a bird, some of them were champion of show, reserve show, that ever in my mind scored above a 90. So you can be as tough or as lenient as you want, but when you're scoring your own stuff and you're trying to make some progress, I think it's a good exercise. And if you've got 5 male birds there, you know what's the best one, not just because you look at it and say it's the best one. That one actually scored the best. It had the best in this section or whatever. It also lets you do that. I think we were talking the other day with Matt McCammon about sometimes extremes don't work. So if you've got a real horrible combed one and you got a good combed one, you're going to get a bunch more horrible combed ones, probably, and very few good combs. I think some things you can't do the extremes. I only ever do them when that's all I got. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. And as far as breeds go, we were talking about that earlier. You got to find, George Schreffer always says, you feed the damn things, raise what you like.
yeah.
So that's it. We, as judges, when we started doing the judging thing, picked up a bunch more stuff just because we never had it. We want to learn more about it. I never had moderns, so I got moderns to learn more about it, and they kind of liked them. Some of the waterfowl we've had over the years, the same reason there. We talk about low maintenance chickens. The Chanteclers definitely that. I think if you want a bird that you don't have to do a whole lot of foo-fooing with, although you got the white thing when you get them ready to go to show, but I can tell you I can watch 20 white Chanteclers in less time than I can one white coaching. So
Really,
when
wow.
I do the Chanteclers, we got a system, and they're not the problem. They're always last, and the water's filthy dirty, and they come out just fine. And they go, they dry fast. They go right back to shape. But you got to find that little niche that you like, and like Mike says, makes you happy doing it. There's been breeds that I've had that I absolutely just hated. And like he says, I can't get them to the sale barn fast enough. It just ain't my thing. I love Polish, but I can't raise them for shit. They pick their crests. They look like crap. They look good when I buy them, but then after that, it's all downhill. So,
well, I appreciate that.
I appreciate it. And one thing I'm going to say too, would talk about handling the birds. So we were at a show a couple weeks ago, and I always catch hell from a certain breeder about, oh, you pick leghorns that are too big, and the blah 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 blah. And we have a friend, Jeff Schenk, that's got some really good large fowl white leghorns, and he had a really good female. And I went to pick her up, and I was amazed because she looked a lot bigger than what she was. And here's this guy over here with the one that is supposedly the right size, and I made 2 or 3 people handle them because I said, and my friend Guy Ruschenberger was there, so we've known Guy for 50 years, and he's a character in himself. But I said, hey, Guy, hand me this bird. He goes, oh my God, that bird's got to weigh 8 pounds. Said, yeah, and I handle this one. I said, this is the 4 or 5 pound bird that we want. And he goes, yeah, boy, she sure looks bigger than what she is. I said, yeah, she's in condition and she's been moist and all that. And I said, that's the difference in judging. I always say I hate aisle judges and I hate picture judges because you don't know shit until you hold them. You got to handle them to have any clue on what birds will. Mike can tell you, birds will deceive you. So the fact that you're actually getting your birds out and processing them, and you know what a good body's got to be, and you know when you process a bad one, what it looks like. So that's lost, I think, in some of the new people because they weren't around them old timers. That's like you said, they raise these birds for a living. So number one, they had to lay eggs, they had to get chicks, or guess what? We're eating beans for a week. So
they had to have bodies. Everything had depth. You have to have depth and length of body, enough of it so they can lay the damn egg. If there's no room there.
Yep. You didn't want that. You know, those things are in the front of the standards, and the APA probably more so than the Bantam standard, but those things are looking for production were things that we were all taught as youngsters. And when I grab a bird, I'm running my hand down its back to see if it tapers or if it carries its width back. And, you know, that was a big thing in reds. You didn't want one that tapered on a red. You wanted to keep that brick shape all the way back. And even in red bantams, I find a lot of them that are way too short. They don't have enough length. So just things you pick up. And the third base things, again, you know, they're starting at a higher level. But in my mind, if you're starting at a higher level, you should be able to take them to a better level.
But if you kind of
perpetuate.
That point of not knowing what it took to get there in order to springboard, right? You're just kind of maintaining. But I was going to say about my mentor, Gary Underwood, always told me about reds in particular, but I think it makes to a lot of breeds, is when you look at them in the cage, somebody might say, hey, that bird's too small. Then when you pick it up, no, I think it's too big, because it goes back to, you know, that, and not every breed, but that tightness of feather.
Fighting over that weight thing a while back. Weight and size need to be combined. So I had a guy told me this bird weighed the standard weight, but it was a buttercup bantam and it wouldn't fit in a bantam cage. It was in a large fowl cage, and I had a hell of a time getting it out of there. I said, I don't care what it weighs. It's got to have that shape that fits the standard in my mind, or I don't care what it weighs. We're not weighing them. We're never going to weigh them. I picked up a 30, 40, 50, 60 ounce bottle of soap all day long for several years. So I know about where they're at. And I know when it's way too big and I know when it's way too small. So that getting that shape in your mind, that type in your mind is something it takes a while. It isn't automatic. Chanteclers was a different type breed. It took me a while. Mine were a little rocky at first, I thought. And so you kind of got to work away from, you know, that interpretation. And I got a pair of partridge here kind of secondhand that were Paul Gilroy's, and they're way too Cornish looking. So I don't want the rock look, and I don't want the Cornish look. I want the Chantecler look. I get some that are, because leghorns are in them, some that are leghorn looking, and you know they do that. They'll get snaky and long and narrow on you. So but I think now after having them for 10 years, when I see one running around, and when usually a young male or a young female popping out of the group, I'll band it and keep my eye on it, and I'm usually not wrong. So better at picking them.
I think it's atavism. I think that's how to pronounce it. You know, when it reverts back, you know, those 5 breeds in the whites particular, you're right. That, you know, stay in that middle, like you guys have said several times, but balance, right? Having good balance is what that. But I find
that is definitely a breed that has to be balanced. If you look at the shillings, and I didn't get to buy them when they come up for sale a couple years ago, but somebody outbid me. But the shillings that he did of the white Chanteclers, which had to be later in his career because the breed itself wasn't, you know, wasn't really established till he was about done. But those ones that are in the APA standard, the old shillings, that's the bird there. Those legs are square in the middle of that bird. And if you look at any of them, rocks, Wyandottes, whatever, the balance is there.
If they outbid you on something you wanted, they must have really. That don't happen too often.
I was torn because I did get the partridge cochins. I wanted, because I have the Sewell partridge cochins. I did get the shillings, but I didn't get the whites. Somebody wanted them. Canadians, of course, they wanted them worse than I did.
Hey, one book. Hey, that's a beautiful puppy right there.
Yeah.
One book that has influenced me. Now it's old, but it's judging it. The call of the hen does the body feel in the hands for production, which I've used actually on my Bantams. But it's called Judging Poultry by Head Points for Production. And I've only found it online. And it's I'm just throwing that out there. It's an interesting read. This guy, he wrote this book saying he could, assess a bird's potential for production based on how its head structure was. And I'm just telling you, it has been I've tested it because one thing I've seen, I don't know, Matt, if you've seen it with your heads on your Chanteclers, but I found it kind of lacking in some capacity. And what I mean by lacking is I've had quite a few kind of crow-headed or snaky type heads, as opposed to a little better structure like a Wyandotte or even good Leghorn or Reds or Plymouth Rocks. And so I've been trying to improve that portion, not just that alone. But anyway, that's a book. If anybody ever cares to, in there, it's only about 80 pages. It's nothing, but it has a lot of pictures, and I don't know, it kind of gave me an idea because I've heard, I use Danny Feather's method of looking over the top. If I see eyes, I don't keep the bird, right, for a good head width. But this talks a lot about eye placement and forward, carrying the width forward, not V'ing. When you look at the front, you don't need, it just V's very quickly. So anyway, that's just something else that, and over these years, I've loved, what you guys are doing, though. I just can't say enough about. I think you guys are really bringing a missing component. I know Rip Stalvey has had his group, but and done some good things. But I really appreciate you guys because I feel like you're, judging and your experience. And you aren't playing the game, man. You just bring it to us, and so I thank you guys.
We're definitely not probably the most political correct ones to do it, but we're blessed that we've both been at it long enough, and him and I together forever since we were kids. But we know a lot of people. We know a lot of people that have different things, so that's been the advantage here. Coming up, we got Don Schrader agreed to come on, so there's a great one about production type and brown leghorns, and can tell you way more than we probably could get here in an hour. Our friend Dan Castle has agreed to come on, and who's a great Australian Brahma breeder. We're going to have Newt Long from the High National on to kind of talk about that. So those are three that are coming up, and we've got this feature on here, and we're probably going to try it here when him and I got some time, but we can go live and take questions. So what him and I will probably do is just go on here live, and it'll stream through Facebook, and you can ask questions, and it'll come up on our screen, and we can answer them. So we'll get brave and try that and see what happens, and we'll kind of pre-announce that before we do it, and so the people will be at a certain time when we can be on here and be live, because I think it goes through Facebook Live, but our software here manipulates all the stuff. So those things are coming.
And visits to different people's farms.
We want to get out and about.
Yeah, we got a lot of people that said, come, just let me know. Well, I think I got plenty of time. Next thing you know, it's been 3 weeks since I talked to him, and we gotten busy, real busy for being retired. I haven't understood that yet. But it's but we're going to do that, and those will be done different. We will do the filming of their place and probably just talk, and then maybe cut it up and do it more, because we don't edit this at all, and do editing and do all that stuff. But we thought it'd be nice just to sit and talk to people, and just start out with,
like Tim said about when Bob did that with the videos years ago of different people's setups. I know Danny Feathers and him and I and several of us did it. That was neat because you get ideas and different things from different places, how they do things. So we'd like to get some more of that done. And what I'd like to do too is at a show sometime, when one of us is judging, the other one can film. But I'd like to have a video of somebody actually judging a class. When has that ever been done?
Yeah,
Oh,
we're gonna
wow.
we're gonna do that too. That's on the thing. Excuse me, judging, and then it's a matter of discipline, and him and I, neither one have a whole lot of it. When it comes to concentrating on, no, we're not going to just bullshit and stuff. We're going to like film washing it, film the whole thing on how we're getting something ready to show, to the show, on through the show, and all that stuff. Well, the next thing you know, you got 2 or 3 things, and you're sitting down. It's like, oh, too late. Forgot to go over there and get that. So, but we're trying. I mean, we're going to develop all this stuff, but I think that would kind of give more of an insight. And we're trying to keep it more towards the exhibition part, standard part that people want to breed for, not just to have a lot of eggs or a lot of meat. And most of those things will carry over, I mean, into either one. But it's we're a different bunch. And there's not thousands of us, but there's enough to keep it interesting, I think. Did you freeze up, Matt? Oh, Matt's gone. Matt'll be back.
Well, I certainly thank you, and very humbled to be a chance to be on here with you guys.
Oh, it's been fun. I don't think we covered everything you wanted to cover, but that tends to happen. Usually, if you just have one word, we can fill an hour just talking about that word.
Definitely, yeah.
It's not a word we can put on YouTube without having all that, all those disclaimers. But anyhow, I have no clue where he went, and I don't think I can stop the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll probably. Oh, now you're gone. You there?
Oh, there I am.
There you. Now I'm gone. Now we're here.
Kind of bouncing.
Wait a minute.
I don't know what
there
happened.
he is.
Hey, there's Matt.
I think I lost internet is what happened.
We kept recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were going, but I don't think it recorded on my end. But we'll see. When I end it here, we'll find out if it says an hour and 6 minutes. So maybe you just lost me.
I think we just lost you.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up. Again, abbantamclub.com. Get your standards ordered because it's coming. Yearbook ads in. Call Caitlin and Tim if you need something. I think I had an update on I had several people call me and email me, message me about the Merrick's and my Ivamec experiment. So just to make a long story short, what I've been doing, I put my first 2 batches on the ground last 2 weeks ago, and then one last week, I think. So what I've done is I've run that Ivamec sheep drench, and they're on auto water, so it's a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon if you want to try it. But I've run the Ivamec sheep drench into their water for a week, then I leave a week off, and then I put it in there the next week. So I've been doing it every other week, and just for whatever, it's 5 gallons of water, and it usually takes them about 2 days to drink it. So they're getting the shot of it every week. So far, I haven't seen anything limping, but it's still a little early yet because usually they get about 3 or 4 months old, and they'll start that. But a couple things I've come to assume, which may be wrong, may be right, but I think people that vaccinate for birds, be careful when you buy those birds that are vaccinated, because I believe they actually shed they shed the virus. So you could bring vaccinated birds into your flock, and they're there for a while, and then all of a sudden you're going to have Merrick's problems that you probably didn't have before because they're shedding that virus, and your birds aren't vaccinated for it. So I'm not a fan of that vaccine. If you're going to use it all the time because you're going to have to. Because as soon as you quit, it's going to bite you in the rear. And basically, I had a guy on the phone last week that told me that he had bought some birds that were vaccinated for Merrick's, and he never had problems with Merrick's. And now everything else at his place is dying of Merrick's. So in my mind, that kind of confirms that theory that they are shedding the virus since they're vaccinated. It's not 100% because those amber links that we bought were vaccinated for Merrick's, and we ended up losing some of them to Merrick's. So,
oh wow,
that's my status on the Merrick's this week.
And like and subscribe if you're on Spotify or YouTube, please share it.
We had over 4,000 views in Facebook, but Spotify, and I know a lot of people are listening to Spotify, but to do that, because it does help, and it will let you know when a new episode comes up, because it does it in my truck when I'm driving. It'll tell me this one will be up, and I can listen to it. And YouTube the same way. It comes up on my TV. Hey, you got a new episode here. Do you want to see it? So those, get on those, and we're trying to build the reach a little bit outside of Facebook.
Well, again,
thanks, Tim, for coming on.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks,
Very
Tim.
humbling, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'm so appreciate being a part of it. So thanks so much.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, Tim.
you.
You bet.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.